Thank you everyone for joining today's session. It's good to see all of you here. And so on behalf of all our partners, FAO, Digital Green, UPLB College of Development Communication in Asia, and Yankasa, we welcome you to today's training program. So today is the third day of our training sessions, which consists of 5 training days. And we're excited to have you all here and see you. So in the next few minutes, just allow me to tackle some of the housekeeping we would be doing regarding the training. So first of all, to have a certificate of completion, you should have attended at least 4 training days out of 5. And besides this, we encourage you to participate in group activities and also in the community of practice, as well as bringing up your questions as well. So besides this, we have, you see in the chat that the training days for the remaining days would be in the chats. And we have developed a Google site, which has all the necessary information for you. It's a one-stop shop for all information and resources, where you can access all the Zoom registrations, all the presentations we've had so far, and even the ones we'd have in coming days would be available just after the sessions. You can also play the recordings. If you'd like to rewatch, all this will be available in the Google site, as well as the participatory video guide, which is always available for you to use even at the end of the training. So we welcome you to get connected with the team as well as other participants in our WhatsApp group. The link to join the WhatsApp group is in the chat if you are yet to do so. And so to maximize your participation, we advise that you use your laptop rather than using a phone for the training session. And also the chat box is open for you to ask your questions if you have any question. Before I go on to give a recap of day 2, you would see, we advise you to rename yourselves. So that is your first name, your last name, and then your country in parentheses. So for example, you'd see mine would be Loma Mezi Oswacha and in bracket Nigeria. They would see a sample in the chat box. So just rename yourself so we can identify you. And yeah, to make it easier for us to know who you are and where you're coming from. So a recap of day 2, I would like to ask you to put in the chat box what we did last time in day 2, what you enjoyed, what the training sessions you remember is. Just tell me in the chat box what we did in day 2. Yeah, so chat box is open. Let me know. What did we do in day 2? What was interesting to you? What can you remember? The chat box is open. All right, while we wait for people to respond, I think I will just go on to giving. Oh yeah, I see one from Maru. I like how we learn to design key messages. Okay, thank you. But visually balancing the videos. Okay. We also learn script writing, tips to angles, framing depths, and pre-production. Thank you, everyone. In day 2, we started creating a script in our breakout rooms. Yes, that's a very good one. Thank you too. What was interesting for me was to learn the storyboarding. Yes, these are good points, and these are all what we covered last week. And so I'll just go on over it all. We spoke about, as you mentioned, the key messages, script writing, which we talked about content validation, and then the various aspects of the scripts we're writing. Then we moved on to storyboarding, shooting basics, framing and image and visual rules. And so for today, to know what we will be doing today, I asked my colleague, Elena, to share the screen. Okay, so for today, we are going to continue with pre-production, where we'll conclude storyboarding and audiovisual. We already started talking about it in day 2, storyboarding and audiovisual. So today, we are going to have more information about storyboarding. Here we'll see more about this, and we would complete the session of pre-production. And out of the storyboarding, we are going to have a group work on this as well. So after this, we have the production phase, which will discuss shooting in the field. Next slide, please. So for production, for the storyboarding session, the objective of this is to understand the audiovisual elements, the techniques and rules, and also for us to get familiar with storyboarding elements and preparation. So this is going to be an interactive session to be interesting. You would learn more about storyboarding, which you would put into practice in the group work. Next slide, please. Then we would move on to the group work where, as I mentioned, we have storyboarding. And at the end, we have the group work presentation. So one of the participants in your group would be appointed as a rapporteur, who will give the presentation on your group's group work. And then we go on a 5-minute health break. And then we move on to the next session, which is the production session. And for production phase, we would be talking about shooting in the field. And the objective of this, this presentation is for us all to get acquainted with lighting techniques and sound recording at the field level. We will also understand the importance of the shot list and equipment listing, and also get familiar with coordination and procedures before going to the field. So it's going to be very interesting. We have a lot in store for you, and we also welcome you to put your questions. If you have questions based on the presentations that would be going on, you can put them in the chat box, or when it's time for the question and answer session, you just raise up your hand and we give you the floor to ask your questions. So now we go on to the first presentation. I would like to welcome our colleague from UPLB, Trina, who would be giving the presentation on storyboarding. Trina, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you, Uloma, and hello, everyone. So, yes, thank you, Elena. So, I'll be talking today about storyboarding, and in particular, in terms of continuity, in terms of video transitions. Next slide, please. So, video production, as with other types of communication, is also uses its own audiovisual language. So, in editing, in coming up with the narrative, there is also, of course, a certain language that we have to use, and we have our own technical jargon, and we're going to learn some of them today. And of course, storyboarding is still very much part of the pre-production phase. Next slide, please. So, from the script that we talked about, so before you start your storyboard, so you have to make sure that your script is already prepared and validated by the local stakeholders, by your subject matter specialist, and it has to be in a way that you co-produce. So that is where the video is different from a traditionally made type of or conventionally made video, because you, in that process, you really create the script together with the local stakeholders, or those who are really have those who you really target to be able to benefit from the video. So next slide, please. So in terms of the storyboard is a sequence of instructions that will include the drawings, sketches, and also the camera shot directions representing the planned shots for the video. So the script will have all of the narration part, or all of the things that will be heard. But in the storyboard, it will incorporate elements like, this is where you also see where the interviews will go, or where the dialogues will go in each shot. So it's a video producer's creative tool wherein he or she proposes the best audiovisual options to transmit the intended ideas, concepts, situations, and processes. So, next slide, please. So here, in terms of continuity, so continuity refers to the relationship between the different shots that make up a sequence and between the sequences in the video as a whole. So the final assembly of the video must result in a continuous, clear, and meaningful flow of information for the viewer. So in terms of content, so the action or process must continue from one shot to the next. So for example, if a person is in one scene, the person is talking while holding a phone in their right hand. So in the next shot, we should make sure that that person is still holding their phone in the same hand. So sometimes we can have some lapses like this, but because of a storyboard, we can make sure we can visualize how each scene will go. Next slide, please. In terms of position as well. So if in one, there should be continuity in terms of position. So for instance, if the subject is on the right side of the screen in the first shot, then of course in the next shot, that person should also be still on the right side. Next slide, please. So also in terms of motion, so if there should be continuity, so if the person is moving from right to left in the first shot, then in the next shot or scene, the person should still be moving from right to left to show the continuous movement. Otherwise, it will seem to the viewer as if the person moved back to the original position. Next slide, please. And also in terms of sound. So it's the sound continuity should also be important. So you should make sure that if you're shooting in the field and in one interview, in one clip, that there's a sound, the interview is being done and there's a sound at the back of, for example, there is some machinery that is being shown or being shot, and you have to cut and then renew that or redo that interview to make sure that, of course, there is still that sound there to make sure that it will seem as if they are still, the shot is being done in that same place. Next slide, please. So there are, of course, in transitions, video transitions that we need to do in order to make sure to link the shots together to make them transition very logically and very smoothly. So these are the following video transitions that we commonly use. Next slide, please. So in audio visual language, the cut or the straight cut is where two shots simply follow each other like two words in a sentence. It's the most basic way to join shots. And you would usually see this in, for example, if you are watching the news. Next slide, please. So fading in or fading out is the second most common type of transition. So with fade out, the picture is gradually replaced by a black screen or any other solid color. And this is used to end movies or implies the end of a major segments. Fade-ins would come from a solid color giving way to a picture or the start of video. So we could see, for example, a black screen turning to a picture or a white screen sometimes turning to a picture. So it represents a full stop. Next slide, please. So a dissolve or crossfade is when two shots overlap for a few seconds and both are visible. And this serves like a pause or a comma in terms of audio-visual language. So dissolve or crossfade is often used when you want to show the passage of time or location, or when time needs to be slowed down or sped up, or there is a strong emotional component to the subjects being shown and a visual relationship between the incoming and outgoing images. Next slide, please. So wipe, this is more of a nostalgic or not so commonly used anymore. But this is where it consists of the progressive replacement of one shot by another as if a curtain were opened. So it happens when one shot pushes the other off the frame. Next slide, please. So a blur, so as the name dictates, consists of the blurring of the image to move to the next image, and which should initially appear out of focus and gradually become sharper. Next slide, please. So those are the most common types of video transitions. So again, this is the storyboard, which we will be trying out in our exercise. So you have your image and you have your shot description. And this is what we're essentially doing in a storyboard. And in the sound part is where you put your script. Next slide, please. Next slide, please.
It
So
should
you
be
can also see the production breakdown. So, but this will also be discussed later on by our other resource speakers, where you put down your shot numbers or location and notes. Next slide, please. So when editing and assembling the final video, so it's best to follow the final version of the storyboard, because disregarding the storyboard can lead to errors and discontinuity in the flow of information. Next slide, please. So it's best to really follow the storyboard. You don't really need to be an artist to add drawings to the storyboard. You can have sketches. You can put images from online that you think will best visualize your video. So, and you can also revise the storyboard according to the sequences as they are actually shot. Because sometimes you do a storyboard, but then you shoot and then you rethink your video. So when you do that, it's best to also revise your storyboard as you go along. And remember that constructing a scene is like crafting a sentence. So ensure that each sequence presents the complete idea. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. But I think that will summarize my presentation for today. So thank you very much.
Yes, this was the last slide.
Okay. Thank you, Elena. Thanks, Oloma. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Trina. That was good. That was interesting to hear. And just if you would like to go further in depth into this, we have the participatory video guide, which is available in the mini site. So you're welcome to use this to go to get further information about the presentation by Trina. And so now we are going to our group work for today. Elena, would you like sharing that slide? Oh yeah, so before we go in, I see Paolo put in the chat, we can we have some questions from people? If you have questions on this presentation we just had now, you're welcome to ask your questions. I'll give about 5 minutes for this, then we go into our group work. So please ask your questions if you have. The floor is open. Okay, I see Imani's hands up, please. Then there's some.
Yes, thank you very much for the platform. I'm very grateful for Madam Trina Lay for her presentation. But I have a question on the storyboard. I have seen the last slide having some numbers there. I think those are the shorts, named by numbers, number 1, number 2, number 3. It will be good if, or is it proper if I write my storyboard and not the shorts number, or it is necessary for me to put the numbers for my shorts? What is your advice on that? Or is just a way of making that your storyboard looks? Yes, that is my question. Thank you.
Hello, thanks, Imani. Yes, well, it is a way of organizing. That's true. It's sometimes also in editing, it helps us because, for example, shot 1, shot 2, that could also be your folders in the when you compile your video clips. So shot 1, you can put all of your video files in shot 1, for example. So all of the shots that you, or images or graphs or tables that you will use for shot 1, you can put in that folder. So sometimes it's also personally for me, it's a way of organizing. But really there are many types of ways to go about doing your storyboard. In other cases, we also put the actual time for each scene. So for first shot, you'll have 0.000 second to 10 seconds, for example. So I hope I answered your question very concisely.
Thank you very much. I got you. Thank you.
Thank you, Imani.
So we have one question from Gertrude in the chats. Is a commercial advertisement part of transitioning?
That is very interesting. Well, here in our particular for our particular purpose, I talked about transitions as the video transitions themselves. But well, if it also will depend on your organization, if you allow commercial advertisements, if you allow that to be more sustainable, then it can be a way of, I think, cutting your segments into parts. For example, if you have a documentary, for example, or if you have a longer type of video, participatory video, you can also kind of cut them and have the advertisements in the middle, if that helps with sustainability in your case.
Okay, thank you, Trina. So all the other questions that we have, you would take them later on. So now we move to our group work. Because we're out of time, we need to move on, then we'll answer the questions later on. I'll keep them in mind. So for now, I would explain the group work we have for today. So the objective of our group work today is to create a 3-frame storyboard for a portion of a narrative script. And the group work and facilitators are still the same, just like the previous training. Next slide, please. So what we are doing today, we are going to use a Jamboard as we've been using, and it's going to be 40 minutes to create the Jamboard. And so we'll be using the narrative script that was developed in the last group work. So the topic you chose and the outline and everything that you chose in day 2's group work would be the basis for creating the storyboarding today. So basically, we expect that you visualize the chosen portion of the script, provide corresponding short description, and write down the portion of scripts that will be heard along the visuals that will be shown. So basically, this is just our facilitators. All the facilitators will explain more this in your groups, and the links to the Jamboard would be in the chats. So yes, thank you, Catherine. Could you put us in groups? Welcome back, everyone. I guess we're all back from the group work. I think it was an interesting one. What do you all think? It was interesting because in my group, we had a good number of suggestions, and it was quite interesting. So, okay, not to miss more time, I think we can start the presentations of the group work. I call on group 1 to give presentation. Daniel, would you mind? Thank you. And you have 2 minutes, please.
All right, I'm sharing my screen and our presenter is Imani, please.
Thank you very much, Uloma, for bringing us back. Thank you. Session. Truly today our discussion was very, very great. We were just creating on our last idea of deforestation, and our shot 1 image is the close-up of the forest, a healthy forest. That is our establishing shot, showing the forest, and it will be there. And the soundtrack is forest sounds, birds, jungle sounds. Then we'll move to the second and third shots, which will be, established, fed in, and being fed out. Shots are people cutting trees. That will be a long shot showing deforestation broadly, impacts of trees being cut down for agricultural purposes, and land clearing. That shot will last for 4 seconds, which will be followed by sound of cutting of trees, voiceover, there narrating what is happening. And we'll have another shot, which will be a medium shot, focusing on charcoal burning, one practice that severely causes deforestation. And the shot will last for 5 to 6 seconds, followed by narration. And the 4th one will be a village meeting that is kind of, is like a solution and creating awareness to the villagers, or on what happened, what are we initiative we are taking now to curb the situation. And the short will be village meeting. It will be a long shot of the village, and a medium close-up of key participants. That shot will last for 15 to 20 seconds. Then now we were just anticipating of what next. Our next shot will be an agricultural practices and eventually a healthy forest environment and livelihood. And we have put there the narration of the shots we were anticipating that after the village meetings, engagements, what will be following then. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Imani. That's a good one. It's interesting to see what you've done in your group. So now we'll move to group 2, which is the Digital Greens Initiative. Nandita, who would be presenting on.
Thank you so much, Uloma. It was really very interesting today with the group, and we let their creativity out, and we have some very unique drawings out here. And I would give the floor over to Coyote for the presentation. All the best.
Thank you, Nandita. Good afternoon, Uloma. Yeah, for the first picture, our artist drew for us the image of some crops in the farm. Some had wilted, some were just kind of like struggling to survive. So we said that the short description is an extreme close-up shot for everybody to be able to really see what is happening. The time we had allotted is between 7 and 10 seconds. And at the background, there will be sad music playing, describing or giving an emotional effect of what is actually happening to the farmer, whom we decided to call Allen. Now, Allen, having seen his crop in the first shot, ran to the warehouse where he could buy fertilizer to apply to his crops. And on getting there, he met a long queue of farmers waiting also to buy fertilizer. And there is a short between the farmers and the warehouse. And that shot pans into the warehouse. And in getting to the warehouse, we discovered that there is a shortage of fertilizers even in the warehouse. And here we allotted 5 seconds, and there is the voiceover of the farmer describing what has happened to him, why he had to run to the warehouse, and what he had met at the warehouse. And for this current planting season, there's nothing much he can do. He's going to suffer loss, just like previous planting seasons where we see fertilizer shortage being always a problem for farmers. But now what he has decided is to look and see what can he do for the next planting season. And ahead of compost preparation, and he went in the last shot he went to an expert who took him through the process of preparing compost. And then he decided that for the next planting season, he's going to adopt that. And we looked at that as going to take maybe about a minute for that video. That was what we did. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kayode. This is also really interesting. This thing is interesting. So we move to group 3 now. And Francesco, would you mind letting us know?
Thank you. I mean, just a second to introduce our rapporteur, Brenda. Over to you, Brenda.
Thank you very much. For Group 3, Farm Ready International, our storyboard is based on the story that we presented on the first day about post-harvest loss, with a focus on a tomato farmer. And we are telling a story about how this tomato farmer experiences post-harvest loss. So in the first shot, as you can see there, the tomato farmer and some of their hired labor are harvesting tomatoes, and we can see them in the garden, and we have background noises, birds, wind, and people are singing, and passerbys are passing by, and that is what's in the background sound, the soundtrack. And in the second shot, we move on to the interview part, and we see the interviewee and the interviewer. The microphone is being held by the person who's interviewing, and they are talking to this farmer, and they are basically talking about, they appreciate them for the good harvest they're having. They talk about their storage method, and also about the transportation to the market. They talk about the containers they use to carry the tomatoes, and these are wooden and plastic. And about the sound that is being used in the background, basically we have the interview questions and answers, and also we have the continuity with background noises from shot 1, since the interview is being conducted in the neighborhood. And we move on to shot number 3, which is our final shot, and we are coming to a conclusion of this beautiful story we are having. And we find ourselves in a storage facility. This storage facility is we see tomatoes, or some in wooden crates, some in plastic crates, and some are on the ground. And we see these containers, they are layered with grass, dry, soft grass. They are layered with that grass. And here the interview also continues, and the farmer is talking about the is talking about his choices, why he chooses to use the wooden, why he chooses to use the plastic, the challenges he experiences, the good things that he does, what he does, why he does it. So he's talking about all that, and where he can get the plastic crates if he needs to use them. So that is what we have there. And remember, since we need sound for that, we have the tomatoes were brought to the storage facility using a motorcycle. So we hear the motorcycle leaving, and we may capture the shot or we may not capture the shot, but and use the sound as it leaves. It may be mentioned or not mentioned. So that is Group 3 Farm Radio International. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Brenda. That's good to hear. And these are good drawings as well. They're interesting to see. So move on to Group 4. Edmond, please, who would be representing your group?
Yes, for Group 4, ours is around manure application as one way of dealing with soil infertility. So in the first shot, we have actually about three frames over there. Where in the first one, we have a long shot of a community that shows the effects of climate change. So this is a shot of a community with very degraded soils and plants that don't look too healthy. And then in the second frame, we have a close-up now of field, a shot of a maize plantation field. But the soundtrack here, we are going to have some sort of narration around talking about how through the years the soil quality in Malawi has been degraded, and due to the poor farming practices, soil improvement technologies, et cetera, including natural calamities, among others. In the second shot, we also have about 3 frames there, where in the first one, we're going to be looking at medium shot of farmers preparing the manure. So this is the shot of farmers doing the manure preparation, preparing some organic manure using the materials, and then a close-up shot of farmers actually applying the manure in the plantation. And finally, a long shot of a healthy-looking rice field and maize field. So in the narration, or in the soundtrack, there'll be a narration about one of the ways of improving soil fertility or degrading soils, being the preparation and application of manure. And then the final shot, we'll have a text slide where we have now the actual steps in the production and the application of the manure. So in the soundtrack, it's going to be basically, these are going to be steps in producing and applying manure in the soil. So you have the various steps coming there. Thank you. That's
Thank you very much, Francis. Thank you for this. It's good to see as well. So we go to the last group, which is my group, and I'll give the floor to Didi Barry to explain what we did.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So my group, we continued our work on our storyboard, which was around soil health and quality and how to do soil sampling to see what the health of your soil is and what is in your soil. So we decided to do a 30-second video. And shot 1 is showing a picture of some fields, and we can see that some parts are planted and some parts are not. And we think this may be because of different soil types or qualities. So that is what this shot is showing. And this is going to take 10 seconds. And we're going to have a local instrumental with local music. And then we'll have a voiceover that's talking about how soil health and the characteristics of your soil, like the minerals, the nutrients, heavy metals, how that can affect crop health and quality. And then shot 2, we show a man and he's using an auger to dig the soil. And so we're demonstrating what is in the soil and the characteristics of the soil. So he's showing the farmers. So this one will take 10 seconds and we'll have a local instrumental as well. We want to incorporate music throughout our video to keep the viewers engaged. And the voiceover is going to explain why it's important, why you should know what is in your soil. And then shot 3 also takes 10 seconds. And this is a picture of a woman and she's putting the soil into a bag. And this is part of like soil sampling so she can take it to the lab. And we have a local instrumental, and then the voiceover is going to explain how we're making soil sampling accessible and affordable, because we know that these were barriers for farmers to adopt soil sampling. And then we follow with our call to action, which is soil talks, do you listen? And no need for a degree, you can become a soil scientist in your own backyard. It's affordable when done together. So it's a call to action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lady Barre. These are all interesting points from the various groups. It's good to see the engagement we've had so far. I think we're done with the group work, and just to relieve stress and to get yourself ready for the next session, we have a 5 minutes screen health break. And yes, just go take a drink, just relieve yourself, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. And in the meantime, Elena, we kindly ask you to plead the
Environment is a simple term with a broad concept of human life. Human beings are dependent on the environment to acquire their day-to-day basics. Human life well-being is determined by the quality and standards of the environment surrounding the creatures. Mtandao wa vikundi vya wakulima na wafugaji mkoa Arusha, MVIWA Arusha, has been championing environmental conservation to its members by introducing several programs and initiatives which encourage members to engage directly in the move. Human activities such as farming by clearing the bushes, trees cutting for charcoal burning, and overgrazing have been key factors that contribute to environmental degradation and hence endangering human life. To curb all these challenges, the organization has taken several measures to ensure its championing spirit theme is adhered to. In that sense, awareness of environmental conservation has been at the epicenter of the MVIWA Arusha activities, as well as activities that promote conservation such as tree planting and clean energy, which increased understanding among the members. In recent years, the organization has engaged directly in programs that support agroecology by involving members in training, workshops, and village meetings. Instead of using charcoal, which promotes deforestation, organization came up with an alternative to abolish that norm by introducing the use of clean energy to its members. The installation of biogas as an alternative to charcoal and firewood clicked well in the members and hence received warm support from the financial supporters, trees, WeEffect, and FAO for the move to be live. Why biogas? To promote the protection of forests, reduce the use of firewood and dependence on natural resources, to reduce the time for families to look for alternative sources of cooking energy, especially for for women and youth. For value addition to cow, dung as they use as a source of biopesticide and booster for their crops. Biogas supports tree nurseries by providing a sustainable and environmentally friendly energy source for various nursery operations. It helps to reduce reliance on non-renewable energy sources, minimizes environmental impact, and promotes the overall sustainability of free nursery activities. In the move to fight against the norm in the families, 67 received the idea and installed the biogas, while 458 trained and 89 adopted the practice. Through training and awareness creation, Mvua Arusha has managed to impact several families who have breathing testimonies. This gives light to the organization toward the agroecological movement in society. Here are some of the live testimonies.
Kwa majina naitwa Editor Florian Gitu. Mimi ni mnufaika wa jiko la biogas. Kabla sikupata jiko la biogas, mimi nilikuwa natumia muda mwingi kwenda kutafuta kuni. Mimi ni fundi cherehani, lakini kabla sijaenda kazini, asubuhi natakiwa nikatafute kwanza kuni porini, maeneo ya jirani na nyumbani. Kwa hiyo inanibidi asubuhi niamke saa 11 ili niwaandae watoto wakienda shule. Mimi nikimbie mara moja porini nikatafute kuni, nirudi nyumbani ndo niende kazini. Kwa hiyo nilikuwa nachelewa sana kwenda kazini. Na pia wakati natumia kuni nilikuwa napata shida kwa ajili ya moshi. Moshi ilikuwa inaniumiza kifua, napata shida kwenye kifua, macho, nilikuwa napata shida. Na pia nilikuwa mharibifu wa mazingira kwa sababu tulikuwa tunakata miti ili nipate kuni. Lakini nilipopata biogas, ninamshukuru Mungu kwa sababu niliweza kukomboa wakati. Hilo jiko imenipa wepesi wa kufanya shughuli kwa haraka. Ule muda wa kuamka saa 11 siamki tena saa 11. Kwa hiyo ule muda umepungua, naamka saa 12 na waandaa watoto, napika chai kwa haraka, napika chakula kwa haraka, na nikitoka hapo saa 3 nitakuwa nimeshafungua ofisi. Wakati wote tayari nipika chakula cha asubuhi na cha mchana. Natamani mimi kama mwanamke, kwa sababu naona wanawake wengi ambao bado hawajapata huu mradi wa biogas, wanatumia muda mwingi kwenda porini kutafuta kuni, na huko porini tunakabiliana na wanyama. Wanyama sasa hivi wametuzunguka, wapo kila mahali. Sasa hivi hata kwenda shambani kutafuta mboga tumeshindwa kwa sababu tupo na wanyama. Mbogo wanaishi kwenye mashamba yetu. Pori liloko karibu na nyumbani, mbogo nao wako humo. Tunapitia changamoto. Na baadhi ya wanawake, mama mmoja alishapotea.
All right. Thank you, Elena. And welcome everyone to the next session for today. I think we couldn't play the whole full video because it's about 12 minutes. So if you would like to watch it, it's in the group chat. It's one of the videos the participants shared. So it's available in our group chat. So now we're moving on to the next session, which is the production phase of the participatory video. And under the production phase, our first presentation is on lightning, which would be given by Riti, our colleague. And so Riti, you have the floor. Yeah, thank you.
All right. So we've spoken enough about camera angles and positioning, and now we've come to the most important part, which is lighting, right? So when it comes to light, you have to understand that if a shot has poor lighting, then obviously you won't be able to see details on it, right? And if say there is too much light, so that will definitely like maybe burn your eyes. I'm sure all of us have experienced this, that if you look at the sun directly at probably 12 in the noon, like obviously you just, directly look away. So that's something that we don't want in our video, which is overexposed visual, right? Which wherein there is too much light. So let's try and understand how we can get our lighting totally accurate. For that, we're gonna like first delve into lighting, and there are like 3 different kind of lights that you should be using. And then we'll also discuss upon source of light, wherein there are like 2 kinds of sources of light, and we'll discuss upon that. And then few characteristics upon it. Can we go to the next slide? Right. So, like we spoke about, why is lighting important? Of course, like you understand that how do we see things? It's only because subjects are reflecting light at us is why we can see everything that we see, right? But besides that, of course, like basic lighting is for us to like see things. But besides that, you can make slight adjustments to your light to actually create a mood. So say we've all seen movies, right? So most of the horror movies are very like it's on the darker side, right? So that kind of creates this mood of like suspense, right? And it works so much, right? Or if we're talking about a happy video, it's always well lit, right? Like a well lit visual kind of speaks that it's like a happy visual. So it helps us create the right mood. Highlighting subjects is something again important. Like you can see in the picture that's behind in the presentation, there's this lady, and you can see there's like light coming on her face from the right side, which is helping us highlight her face, right? Which is important. So of course lighting is very essential and required for highlighting your subjects. And second is it creates like a the third, sorry, it creates a visual depth and realism, right? So if we just have a very flat lighting, say like a front, just a 90-degree flat lighting, so the subject or your visuals will look very flat and they won't look as three-dimensional as they will if you create a good lighting setup, right? Because ultimately it's all about creating those shadows and having the right, like the right angle from which the light is falling on you, right? So you can use lighting to your best advantage to create realism in your visuals. Now, like I spoke, when it comes to a lighting setup, there are 3 kinds of light. One is your key light, the other is your backlight, and the last is your fill light. We're going to delve further into this in the next slide. Can we go on the next slide? Okay. So now I want you all to like really focus upon the image that's also given here. As you can see, we have the subject in the center. We have the camera in the front. Now first comes your key light. So the key light is the primary source of your light, which is at your subject. And it's mostly positioned around 30 to like 45 degree angle to your subject. And this basically creates like a high contrast, like that's the main source of light, and it creates like a very deep shadow with your subject, right? Now of course shadows are something that are like used in the right capacity, look really nice and they give you a lot of depth. But of course deep shadows is not something that's like visually really appealing. So we need to have like a fill lighting, which is there on your right side. Here, the difference is that it's just half as bright as your key light. So your key light is more intense. It's more intense with the amount of light that it's emitting. And like when it comes to the fill light, it's half as your key light, and it's on the opposite side of your key light, right? So then it kind of cuts away the shadows that are being created with your key light. And it also like helps you provide like some illumination from the other side, right? And lastly, we have a backlight, which is kind of positioned a little above, and it basically creates it like it highlights the subject's shoulders and their upper back, which kind of gives it like a 3D effect that okay, like the subject will not look flat because there's something that's coming from behind also and cutting the shadows which are falling behind as well. So can we move to the next slide? Right. So we spoke about shadows so much here, wherein we spoke that okay, we have the key light and then we have the fill light to like eliminate the shadows that are being created by the fill light. So lighting, of course, it is very important to minimize your shadows because shadows can look very like distracting and unflattering at many times. And also say like if we have the sun at a 90-degree angle on our head, right? So it's evident, you must have noticed that like there will be a shadow of your nose and everything falling on your face, right? So that kind of creates like, it'll kind of hamper with the features that are there with your subject, right? So that's not the best lighting that one can have, right? And it doesn't look as pleasing as it should. Lighting also helps us maintaining continuity. This is something that we spoke about in the previous presentation as well. If like there are two shots that you're connecting and if they have like similar lighting, then it feels like, okay, they were shot together and there is no break, right? But say suppose you have a shot which is shot very with good lighting, and then there is another shot which is kind of not well lit, so then it creates a visual jerk, right? So you can use good lighting to your advantage and have continuity in your video. Can we go to the next slide? So here I have some examples like I was talking about initially, overexposed and underexposed, right? So like here, if you see the first picture that's there on the left-hand corner, it's an overexposed photo, right? Because it's kind of killing away the details. Like you can barely see where these women are sitting. Like it's just all white, right? So that's not an example of a good lighting. And if you look at the picture that's right below that, you can like here shadows are way too intense, right? So you can barely make out her face, and that's called a underexposed image, right? And if we look at the right side, these pictures are good examples of good lighting, wherein you can very clearly see the subject, or you can see what they're aiming for. The colors are also coming out beautifully, and it also looks like a very good the picture seems to have a lot of depth in it, so like that's considered as a good lighting. Can we go to the next slide? So now we come to source of light. Of course, like many of us, since we're doing participatory videos, we won't be exactly going into a studio and shooting, right? So there are two ways about it. One is your natural light, which is your sunlight, which we've spoken about. And I think majority of us will be using natural light as the key source of light for our shootings. For that, I will again reinstate a rule that I told you guys in the previous session, which is that it's best to shoot during the golden hour, which is early in the morning or later in the evening when the sun is not too harsh. And also, ideally, like 12 noon is not the right time to be shooting videos outdoors, because the sun is right above your head and it creates like very harsh shadows. And if we guys are shooting indoor, let's say if we're shooting at night or if we're shooting inside a house or a scene like that, then there are like many other options of artificial lighting. Like you can have tube lights, you can have a bulb, you can have a lamp, or you can even use like a halogen lamp or torches. So there are several options for that. And I'm sure many of us are aware of these ring lights that people have been using these days. And that also works pretty fine. Like it works pretty well for an artificial lighting. Can we go to the next slide? So that was about it on lighting from my side. And I hope that like we can keep these few tricks and hacks in our mind to like make our videos look more professional. And I think we're going to jump into the next presentation now, which is on sound. So meanwhile, the presentation is coming up. Like, I just want to make you guys understand that why lighting and sound is so important, because in real life, say you're actually seeing a visual happen, right? So all your sensory organs are working, right? So it's like you can hear all the sound. Like, for example, if you're sitting right now in front of the camera, all your visual senses are working, right? Like you can see, you can hear. So I mean, when we're making a video, it's equally important that the viewer who's watching the video, he should experience all of these sensory things as well in a video. So which brings us to our next point, which is our sound. We're going to like jump right into the presentation. Okay, so right. So here we're going to talk about the significance of sound and how like there are different kinds of sounds, some natural, some artificial, and how can you use all of these in your audio track to like maintain a very professional look to your video. Can we go to the next slide? So first, let's try and understand, say there is a video which doesn't have any sound. So what would you think about it? Imagine if it doesn't even have like subtitles to it. So it's kind of hard to understand what they're trying to communicate, right? Because you have to follow a lot of the visuals to understand, okay, this is what they're trying to talk about. So if you have sound in your video, it'll just make it easier for you to convey a message or convey a information, maybe through a voiceover or a narration or something like that. So it just becomes much easier, right? You don't have to go the sign way language, so makes it 100 times easier. Second is, of course, it has like immense audience engagement, because if someone's talking to you, if something is playing, so like I said, the sensory organs being into use, like of course, if there's something playing and your ears are also at work, then you'll be more engaged in the video, right? So that's the second point why sound is important. Third is, of course, it enhances the viewer's experience. If there is music playing in the background, there's some voiceover, so it's of course more engaging and enhanced experience. Last, and which is also very important, is that it makes it accessible for a diverse audience. So let's say you made a video with a voiceover, and and then you can dub it into different languages, right? Hence today, like all of us are watching movies, and so many of us are watching international movies in some other language which is probably dubbed, or let's say has subtitles. So I think like you can reach a far more bigger audience if you have audio, and you can use it to your best advantage. Can we move to the next slide? This I'm going to quickly run through. There are different kinds of audio elements. I'm sure most of us know a lot about this, and we will delve into each of these separately going ahead. You have your narration, you have interviews, you have ambient sound, music, silence, and also background noise. So let's move to the next slide and tackle each of these separately. First, as we've already spoken about a lot, is your narration or a voiceover, which basically means that there's like visuals going on which are similar to what there's like a commentary going in the video, and you have similar visuals playing on the screen, so it feels like it's all put together, right? But so it's basically like served on top of your visuals, you can say. And it is mostly used to like convey the main content or even guide the viewers as to what you're trying to communicate in your video. Second, which is also a very interesting way of going about things, is an interview or a conversation. Because I mean, who doesn't love to like listen to a conversation, right? Or interviews, for that matter of fact, feel very interactive because it's a two-way discussion that's going between two individuals or a group of people, right? And I feel these kind of conversations also end up capturing very it captures like spontaneous exchanges between people, right? And it also makes the video more authentic, because here you can literally like say, suppose I am telling you, okay, this person said this in a video, versus that person himself is there and is giving an interview and is saying that, okay, this is the case. So obviously it adds more authenticity to the video when the person himself is there in the video and giving an interview. Third, we have the ambient sound. This is similar to, I'll again take you back to the whole sensory thing that we spoke about earlier. Say you're sitting in front of your laptop right now. It's not necessary that you're just hearing my voice, right? Maybe there's a fan there's a fan that's playing in the background, and there's some hissing sound of the fan, or maybe there's someone at your house who's like, or in your office who's walking. So there's like this little muffled sound of like that person walking also, which is basically your ambient sound. So your ambient sound basically means the natural background noises that are there in a location, right? So just adding these makes the experience of someone viewing that video more real, as if you were actually there in that scene, right? Can we So fourth, we have music. I think when all of us were showing us storyboards, a lot of us had also mentioned music in it. And I'm gonna take the same example here again of a horror movie, because I'm sure all of us have seen it at some point. You know how the movie is going on and suddenly they'll have like a very scary music that'll suddenly play. So that sound, that music being used in that video in a certain manner, just it just develops like so many a feeling of fear in us, right? So like that's the power of music that can be used in a video. Or let's say if you're trying to show like an emotional scene, and if you actually have a sad background music song playing, so that will really like help the viewers engage more with what you're trying to show in the video. Generally, and honestly, talking in respect to a PV video, you will most likely be using music at either at the beginning of the video or the end of the video, wherein you have titles. So you have like a little background music playing in the background. But you should also be very mindful of where you use your music, because it should not distract the viewers from the other message that you're trying to put ahead. Last, we also have this term called background noise, which means that beside. So here it's very important to like note what a background noise is and what an ambient sound is. So like if you're shooting in a field, okay, and then there is a sound of a bird chirping, which is kind of dipped, okay. So that accounts as an ambient sound, because ideally, if you were there in that situation, you would hear birds chirping softly. But if there is like a very loud machine or a tractor, and that sound is there, so that just adds like a background noise. So that's not ambient sound per se, right? When it's hindering with your, let's say, when it's hindering with your voiceover or something like that, then it, ends up being like a background noise. And it's very important to like not have these unwanted distracting sounds, which is why initially we suggested that while picking up a location, just make sure that it's away from a school or a noisy place, which will help you eliminate all of these background noises. Can we go to the next slide? So now we're going to like quickly delve into the importance of recording natural sounds. We spoke about this, that like it gives the viewers a sense of what the background, what the atmosphere is like. It also adds a lot of authenticity to the videos, and it keeps the viewers pretty engaged with the video, because it's almost like you're there and you're part of that scene, right? It also gives a sense of a place. So say we're shooting, um, again, I'm going to take the example of a farm. So let's say we're shooting in a farm, and then you hear like maybe birds chirping, or the leaves rustling a little bit. So that'll just give them a greater sense of where this shot is being recorded, right? So that really helps. And of course, it later, once you record all of these natural sounds, it will really help you facilitating for a smooth transition, right? So it'll just help you transit from shot to shot more easily. Can we go to the next slide? It also helps as a backup for poor quality for sound recording. So let's say your high quality audio, there was some goof up and like it didn't come as expected. So you can take the help of these natural sounds to kind of like lift up your actual recording. So it'll just help you act as a backup for in case there was some goof up while recording your actual voiceover or something like that. Lastly, it also helps you enhance your post production, right? So it can just help you cover any natural flaws. That's also the case with music though. Sometimes let's say your voiceover didn't come along very clear, so you can kind of like just give a cushioning to that with like some music or some natural sounds of birds chirping or something like that. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, this is the last slide and also the most important slide, because majority of us will be using microphones while recording. There are few like tips and hacks as to how you can get the audio correct from using these microphones. So as you can see in the picture also, there is a clip available that's there on the mic. So it's very important to use these clips and also put the mic right, properly aimed. As you can see in the second picture, that it should be aimed right on your collar, which is kind of aiming at, like your face. So the voice comes very clearly. It is also important to strategically place this, right? And it should not be touching your clothes or something like that, because that will create like a rustling sound. Can we go to the next slide? And then, of course, comes like a windy and noisy environment. Majority of us will be shooting in farms or open locations or fields where, of course, there will be a lot of wind, which could create a lot of sound on the microphone. So it's best that the first you should have like a cover to your mic, which will eliminate a lot of the sounds there. Second is that you can have the speaker facing backwards to the side that the wind is blowing, right? So then that the subject himself kind of acts like a barrier to the wind, so that the wind doesn't come and hit the mic directly, which will of course create like a lot of disturbing background noise. And also it's best that you select a place which is kind of noise free, which will like help you avoid all of these situations. Next slide, please. Okay, there is one more. Yeah. Here now we get into the significance of a high quality audio recording. Obviously, if you have a good quality of video, then it'll help viewers get a very clear message, and it'll help them immerse in the video itself. It will also keep the audience very engaged. Say suppose like you have a lot of like background music, you have a lot of ambient sound, you have background music, you have voiceover, so that kind of creates like a very engaging experience for the viewers. And also it makes your video look very professional, so that'll kind of set you apart from other people who are making videos. If you just work a little bit on your sound, it'll make your videos look extremely professional, keeping these small things in mind. So now here, okay, this is probably the last slide. So basically, when you're recording a voiceover, it's best suggested that you record the voiceover separately, because if you're shooting the voiceover on the field, then usually like, there are chances of like noise being there in the environment. So if you go ahead and record it separately, so that kind of eliminates a situation like that. In post-production, when you're finally on the editing table, you can also like, decide which voiceover do you want where at what time. So you can make all of those adjustments. It also helps you to like quality assurance of your voiceover, right? So you can like obviously scrutinize it, and you can also put like several effects to your voiceover later in the post-production phase. Can we go to the next slide? This is the last one. So the role of music, I think we've already spoken about it, creates like an emotional impact. It just enhances your storytelling, and it completes the it complements the message, right? So you can also use like music effects, right? So again, horror movies, we've seen as soon as the ghost comes on the picture, there's like a boom sound. So that also creates like the sense of, you're scared in that moment, So a lot of it is to do with all of these musics and sound effects. So you can use all of these to your best advantage while making your videos. Can we go to the next slide? Yeah. So that's about it from my side. We'll have a Q&A session later. So I think we can delve into all the questions that you have later.
Thank you so much, Ritzy. That was a good presentation. So as she has said, if you have questions, you put in the chat and then we'll respond to it in the Q&A session. So now also still under the production phase, I welcome Edmond to give the presentation on shooting at the field. He will also talk about shot list and equipment list. Edmond, please, you have the floor.
All right. Thank you so much, Uloma. Good evening, everyone from the Philippines. I am Edmond, and it is a pleasure to be with you tonight. So for this session, we will be talking about different techniques or some tips when we are shooting at the field. But before that, next slide, please. Let us take a look first on what are the important things that we need to prepare before going to the field. All right. So before we begin to shoot our video, we must consider the following aspects of the production phase. So we need to create and prepare our shot list. So this is essentially is about planning for all our shots. We need to make arrangements for our location. So we need to determine different criteria for planning the shooting schedule. So this refers to our time and date. And of course, it's very important also that we need to check on the availability of our actors, of our production crew, of our interviewees, etc. And then finally, we need to create a list for our materials and equipment. So let's discuss these aspects one by one. Next slide, please. Okay, so when planning for a shoot, we really do not have to follow the sequence of the scenes in our storyboard. So again, I would like to clarify, of course, our storyboard is very important, but when we do our production, so we do not have to shoot in sequence. So what we can do is to create a shot list based on each scene or location designed in our storyboard. And please take note that a shot list is essentially a list of all shots that you need to take for each day and for each location. So if we are going to create a shot list based on location or for each day, thank you. So it will save us time and resources because we are actually grouping the shots that we need to take in one specific location. So what you see on screen is a template. So essentially, this is a minimum requirement for a shot list. Okay, so you have the shot number, the shot type, the shot description, and some notes. Now, please take note that in the notes part or notes section of this template, you can add here your remarks, like if there are specific props or specific equipments that you need to use for your shoot, or if there are specific instructions for your actors or for your crew, you can write it down in your note. Now, take note, as I have mentioned a while ago, for this sheet, as you can see, we are specifying the location. So per location, we need to have a separate shot list. Next slide, please. So that is our shot list. So let's now move on to the next aspect, which is our location. So after creating the shot list, what we can do next is to arrange for our location shoot. Now, it's very important that we need to make arrangements, ask permissions whenever necessary, and consider the following guide questions. So we need to take note if the location can provide access to all suitable objects or processes that needs to be covered in the shoot. Like, for example, if you will be filming or shooting about preparing the manure, for example, in the field, you have to take note if the location or the area where you're going to film will be appropriate for the shot, and you will find there all the necessary requirements that you will be using. The second question is the location suitable for shooting? Does it have ample space? In terms of visuals, is it visually appealing? Are there less distractions? Is it suitable in terms of the required silence, as mentioned by Riti a while ago? Will you able to record the audio clearly? Is it suitable? Is it the environment suitable for shooting? And then finally, we have to ask if the location is accessible for your actors, for your production crew, for your interviewees, etc., etc. So we have to take note of the distance and commutation. Next slide, please. The next aspect is focused on our schedule. So this is our shooting time and date. Next slide. So this should be done in mind. Please take note, both the date and the time. And we have to answer the following guide questions with regards to shooting time and date. Will the persons involved, our actors, our production crew involved in shooting, be available on a given date? If they are not available, so who will assume the role, or are there other interviewees or other actors whom you can contact if we don't have other dates to shoot? The next question that we need to answer is, will the object subject be available at the date of shooting? Now, this is very important. Like, for example, if flowering plants needed to be shown, shooting will have to be planned around the time when the plants will flower. So if it's harvesting season in your script, be sure that it's really harvesting season when you film. Otherwise, it will really be difficult to show scenes if you will be staging everything. It might not be believable on the part of our audience. And then finally, with regards to shooting time and date, outdoor shooting depends heavily on the environment and the sunlight. That's why a specific time of shooting should be determined. Okay, for instance, will there be sufficient sunlight for the shots? Riti mentioned a while ago, while we can use artificial light sources, our best friend when we go to the field is really the sun. So we have to take note. So whether the crickets will be chirping, so we have to take note of this timing. Next slide, please. Now, this part refers to the actors and the persons involved in the shooting. Now, please take note that your videos may often have people involved in the script. They may be giving some input on the practice or simply giving an interview. In this case, the following points should be kept in mind when planning the production. Next slide. So these are the important things that you consider when selecting for actors, for interviewees, and of course, your production crew. First, we have to take note that persons being featured in the film should be knowledgeable about the content they are supposed to speak or the actions that they need to do. Like, for example, if you will be filming about fertilizer application, you have to include actors, real farmers. If you do not have real farmers at the moment, be sure that your actors will be doing the proper way of applying fertilizers. Okay? If you're going to interview experts, be sure that they are knowledgeable about the topic, they have experiences to share to your viewers. Now, the second factor that you need to consider for our actors and production crew are their availability. So we need to make sure that specific persons will be available and they have been briefed beforehand. Before the actual shoot, you can give them the script, orient them about what you're going to film. If it's going to be an interview, if you can give them a copy of your guide questions, the better, so that they can also prepare the answers for the interview. And then, of course, appearance is very important. Okay? If the persons involved in the shooting will be appearing in front of the camera, then their appearance should be loosely guided in advance. So you actually can direct them, like, for example, what they need to wear, what type of clothes, if you want them to bring some props, if it's going to be an interview and they will bring something as they explain a concept on your video, you can actually direct them, instruct them on what they need to do. All right? So next slide. It's very important for interviews that we have to take note that our interviewees should avoid light-colored clothing because, as mentioned by Riti a while ago, it can reflect light and it might have a different effect on your video. So the next part is about materials required. So in this part, we will be listing the different materials and equipment that we need to do. Now, very important, of course, we have to check that our camera is properly working. If you can have more than one camera setup or a multi-camera setup, the better, so that at the end of the day, you can have different choices on the angles, for example, or on the type of shots. So in relation to the camera, be sure that your batteries are charged. You have your microphone, the lights, everything should be charged. So camera has empty memory cards, either already inserted into your camera, or if you have extra memory cards, you also need to bring them. Okay, so bring your tripod, your lights, your reflectors, your microphones, your audio recorders. Based from experience, in addition to microphones such as lapel mics or audio recorders, we also bring our cell phone as an alternative or another device to record the audio and be sure that everything works or functions properly. Then it's also very important to bring a printed copy of your script, of course, your storyboard, because you will be basing your shots, the angles on your storyboard. And another important thing, do not forget your shot list. And bring appropriate props and extra clothes. Okay? So just a practical trip. So just a practical tip, we always tell our production team, do not make them hungry. So if you want to everyone, of course, to function properly, well, of course, we need to feed them. We need to feed everyone. So take note with regards to materials required. So as I have mentioned a while ago, it's very important that you have a list of your materials. You have a checklist before your actual shoot. And then technical appropriateness is very important. This means that if you will be filming, let's say, a 15-day-old sapling, be sure that your prop or the specimen that you will be bringing is an actual 15-day-old. All right? So not younger or older. So it should be believable. Okay? And then, of course, designated person. So there should be a production assistant, for example, designated to ensure that all the materials, all the equipment, all the props or costumes are available during the shoot. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so after you have prepared everything, your shot list, your materials, your equipment, you have made arrangements for the location and for the actors. So it's now time to shoot. But here are some practical guides before taking or filming the actual shot. So next slide, please. We have to bear in mind that it's really very important to follow the shots that you have prepared in your storyboard. As much as possible, stay true or stay faithful with your storyboard because you already planned out everything. It will save you time and resources during the actual shot. However, there may be cases, please take note, that when you are in the field, there are restrictions, for example, or some limitations, which you have planned before, but you were not able to do so during the actual shoot. So you can deviate a little, but be sure, looking forward, you have plan B, no? So you have plan B, for example. Now, following the storyboard helps maintain consistency in the visual style and, of course, in the storytelling throughout the film. Okay? So we need to check the different frames through the camera in a house or space before selecting the final frame. Take time to plan angles. So that's very important before the actual shot. Do not press the record button too hard. Any movement as you press the button will cause a blur in your frames, in your footage, and it's not really good, no? With regards to quality, we have to avoid blurred videos. So we also need to try and shoot any discussion or dialogues where there is less background noise, such as, for example, if you're shooting near the road, be sure that be aware if there are motorcycles or vehicles coming so that you can time also, no, your shoot. Okay, avoid white clothes for actors and avoid white backgrounds. As I have mentioned a while ago, these will cause a reflection and it might cause unwanted effects in our video. We need to keep the camera at least 3 feet away from the subject, otherwise the image will blur. Unless, of course, your camera has features like, for example, if it has a macro setting, then maybe you can move closer. But if it's not, if you do not have, so if it's a normal lens, for example, so at least 3 feet away. And then finally, before the shoot, we need to ensure that proper lighting of our subject. Okay, so next slide. While taking the shot, okay, so these are the important tips that I can share to you. Okay, now please take note that everything may not go as planned. All right, so be prepared to make some adjustments. So while you are shooting, okay, based from experience, if you will only need, for example, 5 seconds, as you have mentioned in your storyboard, it would be best if you can have a longer duration. So we are suggesting if you can have a minimum duration of a shot, then maybe that could be 10 seconds. Now, why do we need to add extra seconds? No, it will help the editor, okay, to add transitions if you have extra seconds in your shot. So essentially for editing purposes, no, it will be easier for the editors to edit. Now, of course, we need to check the sound. We need to monitor the audio on our headphones during the shoot. And then after taking every shot, we need to check the sound while we are in the field, so that if you need to retake, so you will not waste any resources, because you can do retakes, no, in the field. Okay. So make sure that your audio is recorded properly. Okay. Listen to any popping sound. Okay. If the audio is not loud enough, so check on that. If there are noise, as I have mentioned a while ago, if there are unnecessary noise from vehicles, if there are other interruptions, so we have to be aware. Okay. Now, another tip is to avoid too many camera movements. Okay. Why do we need to avoid too many camera movements? Like every frame, you are zooming in or zooming out, you are panning, you're tilting, etc., etc. So it might be cause, okay, discomfort to our viewers. Just try to imagine your shot is moving, you are zooming out, your actors are also moving in the frame, okay, and you have a film transition. So it will really be difficult for our viewers to view, no, if there are a lot of movements. Okay, so take time, take extra shots as much as possible related to your story. Now, for this tip, even if you're in the field already, take the opportunity to take extra shots, even if it's not stated in your storyboard. We can use these as fillers for the interview, okay? And it can also help the editors to select. Our editor will have a selection of different shots, okay, if you have extra shots, no? Like, for example, take shots of the farm, the equipment. You mentioned in the storyboard that you want to take a long shot of your farmers. If you're in the field and you have extra camera, so you might want to consider having a close-up shot, so that at the end of the day, you can compare which shot will work best for your video. Now, the subject could also do some of his or her daily activities at the locale. For example, you may take a video of a farmer or a fisher folk doing their chores at home, getting ready for work, okay? Because this will help also in establishing the scenes. Now, please take note, these are extra shots that are not really part of your storyboard, but at the end of the day, might be useful when you edit or when you put together all your footage. And then another important tip is to inform the subjects that they are being shot. Okay, like for example, if you're in the community, you should ask permission, you should ask consent. Okay, inform them that you are filming them and tell them about the purpose of the video. Why are you taking this shot? Where are you going to use this, etc. And then finally, this is very important, stick to your role in the video production team. So this will ensure that each team member knows their responsibility. That way, they can focus on the specified task. If we assign roles, this will be very good for better time management. Each team member can focus on their task without unnecessary overlap or any confusion about their roles and responsibilities. All right, so I guess that's it for this part of the session. I think this is my last slide. Okay, thank you very much. If you have questions. Okay, back to you, Uloma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edmond. Thank you. That was a great presentation. So now we are in the question and answer session. So we welcome you to ask your questions. You can either raise your hand or put in the chat box and our trainers would respond to that. So while you do it, there was a question we did not address initially, which was on storyboarding. So I would ask it now, and you can keep your questions coming in the chat box. I'll be looking through that. So Trina, this was a question from one of the participants. So the participants asked, what software or app do we use to prepare or draw the storyboard? So would you like to respond to this? It's on storyboarding, Trina.
Hello. Yeah. I actually answered also in the chat box. The question, let me just also review. What software do we use for storyboarding? And well, essentially I said we can be as simple as possible. You saw earlier that we only used the Jamboard. Oh, I cannot review it or sorry, backread. But was that the question? Sorry, Uloma.
Yes, yes. So I just see that you responded to it few minutes afterwards. Apologies for that. Yes, that's the response to it.
Yes, yes. So as simple as PowerPoint or anywhere you can create a 2-column script or a 3-column script, and where you can have your video a video part, or like what we did earlier, we had a video or an image, and then we had the narration part there, and I think that will be okay.
Thank you, Trina. So do we have more questions on the other sessions? Please you're welcome to ask your questions as many as possible. We have about 8 minutes per question session. So please either raise up your hand or put in the chat box your question. As we do that, I would also like to let everyone know that all the presentations from today would be available on the mini sites, as well as currently we have the participatory video guide, which has more information on all the presentations we've had. So you are welcome to access them all on the mini sites at any time you want. And yeah, so please, your questions, we are waiting. Okay, I assume that it was a very clear presentation sessions, since we are not have, oh yeah, we have one from Mugwi. Do the tips apply to a recording being done with a smartphone? I think Edmond, this is for you.
Yeah, actually, as I have mentioned a while ago, I have an iPhone, and I find it that the quality is really good compared with the lapel microphones that we had in our office. So whenever I shoot, I always bring both the microphone and another alternative, which is the smartphone.
Thank you, Edmond. Do we have more questions?
But Uloma, if I may add, we have to be discreet with our audio equipment, so that when you do an interview, we can position the iPhone, for example, on the table, not near on the pocket, because it might be seen. Okay, be careful also with when placing the lapel microphone. You should be sure that it's hidden.
That's a good point as well. Do we have more questions? Okay, so the question, Mugu said, can you see it? I meant to ask about using phones for both audio and video recording.
What I would like to suggest, whenever you shoot, you use a one system camera. Like for example, if you are using a Nikon camera, be sure that all throughout the video. Otherwise, if you will be using, let's say, a Canon, and then you will be using a smartphone, obviously the quality will be different. So when you put them together in the video, So you will see the differences. Well, you can edit, let's say, the color, the saturation to make it blended. However, it will take time for the editor to adjust the setting, the contrast. Okay. I hope
Okay,
that
so
answers you.
yes. So we have a second question from Gertrude. Could we have a rough estimate of cost of basic sets of equipment to do PV?
All right. I hope, I think, can anyone from our friends at Digital Green, do you have any estimate about the equipment, about the basic equipment?
I think it'll be hard for like giving us an exact number, but like having said that, I would really promote that like we've been talking so much about phones, right? So there is this whole concept of a Mojo kit, which is your mobile kit, right? So it has like your mobile phone. Along with that, it'll have like a extended lapel mic which can get connected to your phone. So of course you can like start with that, and then there are these high end cameras, so it ends up like there is a very big bracket to that. But because you've attended these sessions and you've learned these little tips and tricks about getting the audio right, getting the frames right, so I think like the equipment won't matter as such. If you ask me a rough estimate, I think it'll be a little difficult because there is a lot of variety in the market. I think everyone else will like agree with me on
Yeah,
this.
and I'd also like to, excuse me, add on out here. See, we here are talking about participatory videos which are community based, right? So here we are not looking at some very high end quality videos, right? We want more of the concept should be cleared, more of the practices should be shared. So to begin with, yeah, a mobile phone video is a good enough start with. And moreover, we should be mindful of the fact that when we are making community based videos with the community for the community, we have to be mindful of the resources that could be available, right? So there would be places where there would be budget constraints. So let us kind of scale up on whatever resources we have. And right now, I guess all of us have pretty decent smartphones to begin with. So the costing should not be a constraint to the idea of making participatory videos, is what I feel. Imani has a question, I guess.
Yes, thank you. I have a question to Edmund. Thank you, Edmund, for a very great presentation. I don't know if it is a question or it's an advice from you. We have this tendency of shooting. I had you advising us not to use, too much colorful when we are shooting, like white shades, or avoiding white background or too much light at the background, which can bring some reflection which are not good. But we have this tendency, most of us, okay, I don't want to mention another person, but maybe I might be one of them, that we are shooting, then saying I will use application maybe to do coloring or to reduce the light. So I am shooting somewhere where with too much, light. I'm okay. Sometimes I will prefer, okay, when I know how I'll reduce the light when I am editing. What about that, and what can you say about that?
Okay, so Imani, if I go ahead.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, if I get it correctly, you mentioned about on the post-processing part already. If you are shooting in the field, like if you can adjust the color, did I get it correctly?
Yes, it is not about the adjustment, but during a presentation, you advise us not to on the the like white dress or white shirt, or try to avoid the background with too much light. So I might ignore that and say, okay, I'll be shooting in that place, but I'll reduce during, I am preferring not the natural situation I'm supposed to consider. With the fact that I'll use, the application to do, magic things there. So that's why I'm asking, is that proper, and what can you advise on that?
Well, if you really need to shoot in locations where it's too bright, like for example, the background is white, etc., etc., one thing that you can do, well, you can adjust the lighting equipment. If you have, you can also use some reflectors so that you can what do you call that? You can adjust the lighting situation in the location. So that's one thing. Another thing, as you have mentioned, if you really cannot avoid, you can also do some post-processing and adjust the lighting there. Okay. Nandita, you also have some...
I totally agree with you. And here, one more aspect I would like to emphasize on, like, see, at the end of the day, when we have limited resources and we have gone there to shoot a video, right, into, say, an area where we've prepped and we've got actors, we've got things, storyboard, when so much of effort has gone into designing it, then maybe some basics like light and all, they can always be kind of taken care of, or rather we can be mindful. Secondly, it's good to depend on post-production filters, but imagine you've gone there, shot, and then when you come back in the post-production, you see that it is not coming out as desired. So then it will be all effort and energy gone to waste. So that should not be a thing. So whenever you're shooting, follow the basic guidelines, the basic principles to the max, and depend on post-production filtering softwares to the minimum, because at the end we want to bring out realistic images, realistic shots and all. So that's all I would like to add on it.
Okay, thank you. We have one more question. This will be the last one, then we close for the day. It's in the chat. So can you share tips on the techniques you use to capture authentic and compelling moments during dialogue scenes? So who would like to take this?
I think I can take it. If we're shooting like a dialogue scene, we spoke about this one camera angle, which is an OTS shot. It's called over the shoulder shot. So you can definitely like place your camera behind one of the speakers, or like the person who's basically hearing the conversation and who is being spoken to. That can be like an interesting way to go about it. And then there is, since you're asking about like on top of that, what is like a compelling way to like capture these extra moments, there is also this term called cutaway shots, right? So after you have your one fixed camera, your OTS shot that is being taken, maybe you can have like another camera in your hand, and then you can take some other filler shots, like maybe a close up, an extreme close up of their eyes. So if the speaker's talking about something extremely emotional, and then you can see those emotions in his or her eyes, then maybe you can have those extra filler shots as well, is what I would suggest. But to get the basic scene right, OTS seems to be a very interesting camera angle, in my opinion.
Thank you, Ritzy. And I see we already have responses to the last question there. So it's going to be the focus of our next week's session, which is the production. We'll talk more about editing and the apps you can use. So Edmond has dropped some in the chat, so you can also use this opportunity to look through it and see if you'd be interested in it. So we've come to the end of our day 3. Thank you, everyone. It was an interesting and interactive session. And to wrap up, just to mention what we've done today, we spoke about lighting, sound. We also spoke about shooting in the field, the shot list and equipment you need to shoot, and also the tips and tricks in shooting in the field and getting the right shots and the right document basically for your video production. So just to close as well, I would say that our next meeting, our next session is on the 28th of November, and we would be covering more on production phase. We'll complete that, and would also discuss on the post-production phase. So we welcome you to register for that. The link would be in the chat, and also to continue the conversation, we welcome you also to join our WhatsApp group. The link also would be in the chat. And so now we have a poll that I asked my colleague Catherine to launch, so we get your response on that. And as we do the poll, I would like to say that we have this reflection point that and practical that we want you all to go home and take a look at. So this reflection point will continue the conversation in our WhatsApp group, and it's going to be on, so we ask that you take shots using the techniques you have learned so far and share them in the group. So for this, you would choose a subject and use any or a combination of the types of shots to show your understanding of the concept. So the different shots that you've learned so far are the long shots, the mid shots, close-up shots, extreme close-up shots, and over-the-shoulder shots. So we welcome you all to use these shots to create, to see if you've learned the techniques you've learned so far. So if you take these shots, you can share it on the WhatsApp group, and then the facilitator as well as your co-participants will give feedback on these shots based on the aesthetics, the lighting, the framing, and overall the techniques that you've used. So this is going to be a conversation. We'll still put this point in the WhatsApp group. So we welcome you all to engage with this and bring in your shots so we can all see how we've learned so far and make it interactive for everyone. Thank you all. And please, before you go, respond to the feedback. And thank you for today. See you on the 28th of November. Thank you all very much. And good night.
Thanks very much.